Well, TCU might currently have the biggest bandwagon Uncle Lou has ever seen in my entire life of being a college football fan. This is alarming. Or is it? Honestly, it's not really that surprising to me. I'm going to be honest for a second here. If this was anybody other than Georgia playing TCU in the national title game, I'd probably be pulling for TCU too. I have a habit over the years when it comes to watching sporting events on TV in a game where Georgia's not playing, so I don't really have a real rooting interest one way or the other. I find myself pulling for the underdog a lot of times. Don't we all kind of do that? I'm not a huge NFL fan. I don't have a favorite NFL team or anything like that. I do watch the NFL and I have players I like to watch in the NFL. And I don't watch a lot during the regular season, but I watch a lot of playoffs, NFL playoffs, and of course the Super Bowl. And more times than not, I find myself pulling for the underdog in the Super Bowl. College football championship games have been a little bit different for me because if you've been around this channel for a while, you know I am a huge SEC homer. I don't hide from it. I don't deny it. I don't apologize for it. I like to see the SEC do well. Generally speaking, if Georgia can't win a natty, I'd just soon see Bama or LSU or whatever other SEC team win one. As much as I like to, I'm a Georgia fan, so I have to hate Florida or certain teams or whatever. I do like to see the SEC do well. There have been some occasions over the years, though, where that hasn't been the case. And this year in particular, I think if Georgia weren't in the national title game, I might find myself pulling for TCU in this game, too. I've heard from a lot of people over the last couple of days, and the majority of them are pulling for TCU unless they're Georgia fans. And like I said, it's not a real surprise to me. It's not the kind of thing where I'm going to, get on here and pretend to be mad about it or laugh about it or whatever. I totally get it. The underdog story is a story that as sports fans, we're all drawn to in one way or another. Go back to even the beginning of this season when you had like Kansas starting off 4-0 or 5-0, whatever it was. Everybody in the college football world was talking about Kansas. Remember when they played Duke in like week 5 or something, and both those teams run? It was just weird. I think they were both undefeated. It was weird. Everybody was talking about, we love a good underdog story. So I get it from TCU. TCU recruits in the 40s, 50s, and 60s a lot of times. I think they've got, the somewhere between the 35 or 35th and 40th most talented team in the country, according to 24/7's talent composite index. If you look at like number of 4 and 5 star players, I mean, the difference between Georgia and TCU is just ridiculous. Now, I'm not saying any of that to say that means TCU can't win the game. I'm saying that to say TCU is clearly an underdog here, no matter what way you want to look at it. If you want to just go off the point spread, TCU is an underdog. If you want to go off of the perception of the two teams, TCU is an underdog. Name brands in terms of who's been like considered, a really good team in college football and who hasn't. TCU is an underdog. The size of the school itself, TCU has 9,000 students on average in a given year. An underdog. Fan bases. There aren't any TCU fans. Now, I'm being facetious. There are, and I've heard from several over the last few days. I'm talking in generalities here, right? There's a lot more Ohio State fans, Michigan fans, Southern Cal fans, Bama fans, Georgia fans, Florida, Tennessee, Clemson, Oklahoma, blah, 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 right? Fans around, whether you're talking about on the internet or whatever else, then there are TCU fans. TCU is just an overwhelming underdog in every sense of the word. And in sports, people love a good underdog story. So I understand. There's a second part to it, though. And the second part is I really don't think it matters who Georgia was playing in this year's national title game. The majority of people will be pulling for the other team. People don't want to see Georgia win a second title in a row. They don't want to see it. They don't want to admit to themselves that Georgia is turning into what they think they're turning into. Well, they are. Georgia is turning into what you don't want them to turn into. Georgia right now is the preeminent, the premier, and the predominant program in college football. There's no denying that at this point. Georgia's going to win this game against TCU. I know it. You know it, and the Ecuadorian people know it. Everybody knows it. Georgia's about to win this game against TCU, claim their second straight national title. They're going to be 15-0. In the last 2 years, they're going to be 29-1. They are the standard in college football. Bama was that for a while. Clemson, you could argue, was that with 2 titles in 3 years. They won the Natty in 16. They won it again in 18. They were in the playoffs, I think, 6 years in a row. 6 ACC titles in a row. They became kind of that for a while. That's Georgia right now. And people don't want to see that happen. And I get that. If it was another team that was doing what Georgia's doing right now, I'd probably feel the same way. So again, it's not something that makes me mad. I totally get it. But I think the combination of those two things, the huge underdog story that is TCU. I love Max Duggan. Look, Max Duggan's been one of my favorite players to watch all year. In a perfect world, I would love to see Max Duggan go out in this game and have a great game, but TCU still lose. That would be like perfect case scenario for me because I do like Max Duggan. I have loved watching Max Duggan play this year. The guy he puts everything on the line on every single play. The guy's unbelievable. I made the statement yesterday. I want Georgia to put this game away in the second half. I do not want a scenario where, let's say, Georgia's up 6 points and there's a minute and a half to go in the fourth quarter and TCU has the ball at their own 20-yard line and they need an 80-yard game-winning touchdown drive to win the game. I don't want to be in that scenario as a Georgia fan. I've seen Max Duggan and that TCU team do too many things in the second half and fourth quarter and late in games this year to feel comfortable in that situation. I want Georgia to put it away, but if I could write this thing and it would go however I wanted, I'd have Max Duggan have an amazing game, but Georgia still come out on top. I have loved watching Max Duggan play. I've loved watching TCU play. It is a great story, and I completely understand the narrative out there that it's kind of a Georgia versus the world deal, at least when it comes from who fans are sort of pulling for in this game. I completely get it. I'm not mad about it. I completely understand. With that being said, that's going to lead to a whole lot of disappointed people on Monday night because Georgia's about to come out and roll in this game. I think TCU, what they did against Michigan, that's going to be the pinnacle of what they do. They're not going to turn around 8-9 days later and pull off a similar upset against Georgia. TCU played a great game. Michigan did not. TCU gets the win. Ohio State played a great game. Georgia did not, but Georgia still found a way to win the game. Georgia's due for a pretty good game. Their defense has not played well the last 6 quarters, going back to the SEC title game. The thing about TCU, and I'm going to make a video kind of breaking down my thoughts on the game, but just in general, sort of the passing struggles that Georgia's defense have had over the last 6 quarters, the second half of the SEC title game against LSU, and then the Ohio State game. TCU doesn't have that kind of offense to do that to Georgia. I love Quentin Johnston. He's one of the best wide receivers in football. He's not Marvin Harrison. And even if he is, they're number 2 and number 3, pale in comparison to Ohio State and aren't even as good as LSU's 2 and 3. So they're not going to come out and just, Max Duggan's going to throw for 500 yards. Max Duggan's going to do a lot of running around in this game. If TCU's going to win this game, it's going to be with the legs of Max Duggan, not the arm. But anyway, another video coming with a breakdown of the game later. But TCU's had a great run. It's coming to an end Monday night. And I'm going to be honest, I'm kind of glad 99% of the college football world is rooting against Georgia and pulling for TCU in this one. Because that way when my Dogs pull it out Monday night and hand deliver Uncle Lou his 2nd straight national title, there'll be a lot of pissed off people. Have a good morning.